following in this. Yeah, so the first step that we'll be following in this process is that we are making a list of all the accreditation or currently existing accreditation parameters. Also, what is the expectation of a school from the national education policy? So with regard to this, we have enlisted all the accreditation programs. Second thing that we are doing is we are making a list of all the parameters that are covered in the accreditation model. So once we have the master list, third thing we are doing is how is each parameter evaluated and trying to find convergence in evaluation of each parameters by the accreditation model. Where there is an overlap in the evaluation parameter, we are considering that to be one parameter. If there is no overlap or if there is a significant difference, they are considered as two different parameters. Now let us say the size of a classroom, if it is contained in two accreditation or standards model, and if there is one is saying that if it is convertible, so one is saying it is measured in square feet, another is saying it is measured in square meters, then since it is convertible, it will be taken as a single parameter. But now if it says that qualification of teachers, so if one accreditation model is saying qualification just regarding the subject, another is saying qualification regarding the qualification in the education. So if somebody has done BCom or MCom and B.Ed and M.Ed, so things like that. So in those, or D.Ed, so in those are different parameters, non-convertible. So they will be considered as two different parameters. So we are listing, in the current process, we have listed out all the parameters that are there for each accreditation model. In the next step, what we are planning to do is we are going to understand how each parameter is evaluated and trying to reach as much objectivity as possible. So each parameter would be evaluated and achieve as much objectivity as possible. Fourth step is once the parameters is made as objective as possible, we would be giving a clear objective step, and each parameter, regardless of anything, would be weighed against a 10-point scale. In this 10-point scale, there instead of making it an absolute scale, we plan to make it a relative scale. So it is very similar to the CGPA or the GPA system we have in engineering colleges and other places, where management schools, where instead of, so for example, if there's a parameter, I'm just giving a simplistic example of the size of classrooms. So a size of classroom would be evaluated with regard to a GPA scale, a relative scale. So if there is a significant, when we talk about relative scale, it is going to be on two statistical parameters of average and standard deviation. So with that, we will be bucketing it out. So instead of saying pointed this thing, we will be bucketing it out into A, B, C, D, E. So these five parameters, each given 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10. So that will bucket out the scoring for each. The advantage of a relative scale is it prevents corruption in our working systems. So if a school is able to manipulate their scale, if their numbers, so the raw data would be stored and that would be replaced by what is called a relative scoring data, because the aim is to show differentiation that is there between schools for various parameters. Now, the aim of doing it for 10 marks for each parameter is because we are making it valueless currently at the time of evaluation of each parameter. Now, the next step after once we get the score and the relative score is attaching value for each. Now, instead of pointing out as a universal parameter, now there are different models and different think tanks, different educators, different organizations that place different values for each. Now, let's say there are 100 parameters that are there to evaluate schools. That could be input parameter, output parameter, or outcome parameter, the learning outcomes. Now let's say the CSF Foundation here may say that we are out of those 100 parameters, we are focused on 10 parameters. NISA India Education says that we want to focus on 25 parameters. So the advantage is that the software system can generate rank list or score list as per the values provided by each parameter, instead of getting into this fight between is CFS better or NISA better or Rajendra Singh ji's ISA better or anything better. So we are just getting into a valueless evaluation of parameters. Once evaluated, the score reporting can be done as per different organizations. Now, the advantage is this provides a universal set of data and not getting into this thing, and evaluation would be done for this. The second advantage is that this can be evaluated for each. So for example, this can be used for multi-dimension. So it becomes like in public policy, as we talk about Aadhaar. Now, Aadhaar can be used by multiple agencies. We are not saying that this should be used for providing school licensing. This should be used for providing funding for schools. It could be used or fee regulation. So some states do fee regulation of schools. It can be used for multiple parameters. Next thing is it can be published data. So a parent who is getting into choosing a school for his or her child can choose the school based on a variety of parameters instead of, he can look at the universal set of parameters, but also look at variety of parameters, how the school is placed. Another thing is consultancies become, since this data is published, consultancies, think tanks and consultancies can get into basically advising schools on investing into improving their own schools, so that they can improve their net outcome. So this is some of the advantages that are there. So I would want to now talk about how this system would be administered. Now the system would be administered primarily by looking at by a third-party agency. We want to make it a scalable system. So when we say pilot in Pune, it doesn't mean we are building a system for Pune. We are building a system for Maharashtra and ideally for India, without any sort of distinction. You should be able to pick up this and place this in Bangalore. You should be able to place it in Delhi, and so on and so forth. So the advantage of the system is it is based on third-party evaluation. We have thought of a price, and that price can grow in itself as a market. We are planning of creating an IT-based marketplace where any school in anywhere in India can register themselves. Any person anywhere in India can register themselves to become an evaluator of the schools or the accreditor of the schools. Now, for becoming an evaluator, you basically have to, it is like a CA exam or a CFA exam where you basically have a certificate course that you have to pass. You can have multiple levels of this certification course, and your multiplicity of levels can be based on the exams that you passed as well as the number of schools that you've evaluated. It is a combination of exam and evaluation. We are still figuring out how to matrix it, but evaluation as well as exams. So the advantage is a person can register themselves on an online exam portal. That person can pass an online examination. We can take an evaluating agency to basically become a national evaluator. Like, let's say we tie up with Pearson's or some third-party private evaluation agency. Those people basically use this platform to, anybody can just join, pass an exam, become an evaluator, do a certain number of evaluations of schools, pass another exam, become a second-degree evaluator, do third number of evaluations of schools and become a third-degree evaluator, and so on and so forth. And based on that, the person, each school would basically do a self-evaluation, then pay an amount that we have currently thought to be around 2,500 rupees. After that, the software system would randomly allocate an evaluator to that school. The evaluator would go to the school, spend a couple of days to evaluate that school. If there is no significant difference between evaluation, so out of the first level evaluator would be paid, say, 1,000 of the 2,500 rupees. We could change the price, we could increase it or decrease it. But let's say what we've currently thought is he spends a half a day for first round evaluation, and he would basically get about 1,000 rupees for evaluating that school. On that basis, a second round evaluator would again be randomly picked. He would again go to that, he or she would again go to that school, evaluate that school, and he would be paid 2,500 rupees. If the first and second round evaluator, the second round evaluator would obviously be more experienced, would be more senior. So if there is no distinction between the first, second round and the self-evaluation, or insignificant distinction between them, then the school is given that score. If there is a significant distinction, to get that score, the person has to again pay, say, about 2,000 rupees for the third round evaluator to go. Now, if there is no distinction between second and third round evaluator, that is given that score. If there is again a distinction, then another round of evaluation would take place, and this cycle would continue. But we would try to make it more and more objective in nature. So this is the model that we have thought of, without any appeal, without any manual intervention, without any sort of a court system where you're appealing and there is a distinction that is made and evaluations are made automatically. It is, and scores would not be revealed as long as evaluations keep going on in this loop. A school can get evaluated or apply for new evaluation as many times as they want, as many times as they want to pay the fees. And that is the advantage, because they can keep evaluating themselves. And the larger advantage of this system is this can be scaled up without any cost. So for example, we build this system and an IT platform in Pune, and tomorrow this system wants, a school in Calcutta wants to apply, or a person in Calcutta wants to become an evaluator. So they just, both of those people just have to come on the marketplace and register. The big question is, how much is the acceptance that is created? The acceptance, we believe, would be created by two things. One is government bodies around the country start accepting the data. So that creates, so for example, CBSE says that instead of sending my own evaluators, I am okay with this system to evaluate. Now, when will the government body choose to shift from their current system of evaluation to this data? The question is, when the confidence level of this kind of data increases. In Pune, for example, as a government body, since we are the creator, and across Maharashtra, we plan to use it as a school standards authority, and we want to give it some degree of sanctity. But this system can automatically be used anywhere in the country. So what we want to do is, we want to keep the school standards authority a little distinct from the evaluation system and the software system. The reason is, we are taking the data. The reason is, instead of recreating this in Delhi, recreating this in Karnataka, recreating this in Andhra Pradesh, and so on and so forth, we should just be able to pick up this data, because the school is there, the evaluators are there, and it is just a standard system, a public good that is owned by everybody and not owned by everybody and anybody. That is the larger aim that we want to create in this system. This system, we believe, since it is software based, without any form of back-end manipulation, and data is being picked up. We are not saying that because the system is giving this data, we are just wedded to that data. We are, by having that distinction, as long as the system remains good, the data remains good. And tomorrow, now let's say the Center Square Foundation comes up with, okay, we have 100 points here. Center Square Foundation says that no, the school have to evolve itself. We want to make it 102 points. So we will evaluate on all the 102 points. Another thing is, let's say all evaluation systems and parents who are looking at the evaluation data, because it's a publicly available data, all parents who are looking at the evaluation data are not choosing, let's say, 2 or 3 parameters. Means that, let's say, availability of typewriters in schools, you know, or availability of projectors in schools, so now that has become an irrelevant data. The software system can become such that over a period of time, when it is not in use, a certain parameter is not in use, and we can decide on that time period, say 1 year, 2 years, or something like that, is not in use, then that parameter would no longer be evaluated for schools. Best of the schools are not basically having that parameter. That parameter would no longer be evaluated for schools. That parameter would become irrelevant. So newer parameters can come in, older parameters can go out, newer ideas can come in, and so on and so forth. The software system keeps evolving itself with a basic amount of research. And for that research, we can have an independent organization doing that research. What are the parameters? And they're not selecting parameters. They're just searching parameters. So they can search global best practices all the way from Sweden, from USA, and so on and so forth, and basically build up this system as we go ahead. So that is the larger aim that we are hoping to achieve through this system. And we are hoping that the system would have its own credibility over a period of time, that government organizations, private organizations, associations, organizations that are registering schools like IB and CBSE, ICSE, state boards, when they're giving what is called manyata for schools, those would basically start taking this data rather than doing a parallel thing. And parents would also start doing, a school would also benefit, a private school should be able to demand a higher fee because it is rated higher on these parameters. So, and parents would also have a sense of understanding that I'm paying an X amount of money, so government school is doing better. Now, I want to just bring in one more angle. We are evaluating all sorts of schools regardless of the ownership. We will be evaluating government schools, private schools, X schools, Y schools. The question is, government schools should always, I'm telling you, sadly, it is not sadly, but that is how it will be. Government schools would always be at the bottom. The point is, government schools would be at the bottom, and public representatives, since this is publicly available data, public representatives from time to time would be forced to invest into government schools. But since government schools are providing the services for free, now let us say there is a 10-point overall CGPA scale. Now a government school is rated at 8. Another private school in that same locality is rated at 7.5. That 7.5 school would shut down. And everybody would say that we'll go to a government school. The public representatives would be forced to say that, oh, all private schools are at 9. There'll be news that will keep coming, so on and so forth, that all private schools in that given locality are at 9. Now, public representatives would also get a data. How does my school rank against all schools in the country? How do my school rank against all schools in the state? How do my school rank against all schools in the locality? So they would be forced to keep investing into improving public schools. And there is a clear now how to invest. It is not that principals or public representatives are experts. We expect an entire ecosystem to come up where consultants, education consultants would jump into this and say that we will be guiding schools to basically improve themselves. Now, what happens is now public schools are investing, the 8 becomes 8.5. And now, though it is a relative thing, it will remain at 8 despite, because you don't have to just improve, but you have to improve in relations to others. Now 8 becomes 8.5. Private school was at 8.5. He also is forced to invest to go to 9. And it is not that everybody hits a 10. So there is going to be a continuous improvement because of this relative scaling system. There's going to be a continuous improvement in our educational outcomes and educational parameters, and how as a society we are viewing as education. And instead of believing that it is a CSFs or Rajendra Singhs or NISAs or SMFs or CBSEs or XYZ, where we'll all always, because we're all thinking individuals, we'll never come to the single platform, a single page saying that this is the ultimate educational thing. This is an evolving thought. So this will keep constantly evolving, pushing schools to do better, pushing schools to do newer things, pushing schools to invest, and pushing and bringing in an entire ecosystem into this. The data would become like Aadhaar. This is like Aadhaar for schools. Aadhaar never says that this data should be used to give this scheme benefit. Aadhaar only says that this is my biometric information. This is a huge database that is available. This is the school. So we are evaluating schools. It's a private ecosystem. It is not a government inspector going and evaluating. And as an inspector, if my evaluations are constantly being, and this again, we can build into a software system, an intelligent software system. If my evaluations are constantly being nullified by other evaluators, which means that I am not part of the system, I am not understood this thing. I am constantly giving exams to remain at that level of evaluation and to upgrade my evaluation to earn more and more money per evaluation. So considering all of these parameters, my evaluation of schools, this would largely, I'm not saying fully, largely weed out corruption that we see from school inspectors. And we will be able to build out a system which we can further take for higher education, for play schools, and this can go in all directions. So this is my basic submission. We in Maharashtra have started working towards this idea. We are open to learning from your thoughts and ideas how we can improve it, because this is still being built. We want to co-create this. And we are open to working with all organizations. We'll do MOUs. Of course, we cannot pay you, but we are willing to do MOUs with all reputed organizations across India. And we want to build out a system that we obviously want to use for Pune and Maharashtra, and then obviously take it to, and if I am not here that, oh, our systems are being used in Assam and things like that. We don't want that bragging rights. If you use it, you use it. If you don't use it, we're okay with it. We just want a perfect system from your knowledge, experience, and everything. So I'm sorry, I think I've overshot the time by 5 minutes. I'm sorry. And I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I hope I'm able to create a mental picture for this rather than this thing. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Ayush ji. And I'm sure we have a lot of questions. But first, I would go to Rajendra ji because he is there and they are actually in the process of experiencing this new accreditation system. So, Rajendra ji, first, a quick remarks from you. Let's say in 5 minutes, how does the Maharashtra School Association sees this accreditation process, and then we open the floor to all for the quick Q&A.
Firstly, I would like to thank Ayush ji for giving this time and opportunity for all the stakeholders to understand what is being done in Maharashtra. I would like to also take this opportunity and take this platform of appreciating his efforts towards this accreditation process, because at times it was very difficult and I've seen the process and still he has struggled through and got it to the place where it is today. About the system, he has explained it in brief, and he's the person who has initiated it. And from the day one, he has taken, from the inception point, he has taken all the stakeholders, the government accreditation body, the private schools, everybody together to formulate this. That is the brilliance of this model, and that is a workable model. Also, the importantly, we have understood the commercial aspect while the accreditation is done of how commercially it will be viable, and the most important thing, it is an objective accreditation where regulation, corruption, and other things will be out of the system. So these are the three important points. As we have less time, I will rather not take 5 minutes and finish it, and let's go to question and answers of the participants we have today.
Perfect. Thank you, Rajendra, for keeping it short and simple. Yes. So now we open the floor for questions. Anyone who wants to volunteer